All right, everyone. So I just got done playing Mafia: The Old Country, and let me tell you, I absolutely loved this game. So before we get into it, I'm just going to say there's going to be a ton of spoilers in this because I was going to do a big video, pros and cons and all of that, but after the ending, I'm just going to give a few cons and then really just go in to how I felt about the story. So if you don't want spoilers, click out now. We have a first impressions video that I think actually does a pretty good job of reviewing the game without spoilers, so you can check that out instead. But we're going to get into it and we're going to start spoiling some stuff. So let's get out of the way first the cons. The thing I did not think was that great about the game because there's so much I loved about it. I just want to get the cons out of the way. For starters, there is, at least I'm playing it on the Xbox, there were a lot of weird technical things with whether it's kind of textures and facial pop-ins like facial hair and stuff like that just didn't look great. I had a few moments of lag and slowdown one of the more crazy segments. So it's not game breaking by any means, but there were just instances where the game looked great, and then there was instances where it was like, man, that looks weird. And it did happen throughout the game. So I just wanted to point that out, that there is some of that. Once again, not game breaking, but there is some of that. The second part of this is it's kind of a con, but not really, because to me it wasn't necessarily, but I think to many it will be. This game is a very slow starter, and it's compared to especially Mafia 3, it's a much slower game, right? This is a game that says we're a narrative game, we're going to stick to it being a narrative game. There are some cool action moments and all of that, but it's nowhere near what Mafia 3 was, and even slower than a Mafia 1 and a Mafia 2. So, once again, that's another part of it. And the third part, and this is something I think constantly has been a problem for the Mafia series, is they have really cool parts of the game that just aren't fully utilized, right? So you have this money system in the game where you could get stuff and you could buy upgrades. They have this cool rosary bead system where, that's kind of how you're getting your power ups. And it's just like, it's all a really cool idea. Everything about it is cool. I've maybe found myself once or twice buying any sort of upgrades. It just felt like each mission, you just didn't need to do any of it. I obviously put the rosary upgrades in, but I didn't fully flesh out what that could have been. I wasn't upgrading the cars or the horses or any of that. So that's another part of this and it feels like this was the case in a lot of Mafia games where they give these really cool systems that just aren't fully utilized. It's like kind of like half baked, it's half in there. So those are the cons, right? That is it for what I thought this game kind of lacked. Now, let's get into the pros. So, once again, there's going to be a ton of spoilers in this. So, first off, I just got to say, this game keeps you interested the entire time in the storyline. Everything that's going on, the characters, right off the jump, I was bought in to Enzo as the main character. He is my favorite character out of all the games for Mafia. From the first one to this one, he is by far my favorite character. I thought he was, just to me, he was the most likable out of all of them. But at the end of the day, because that was my problem in 1 and 2, I just really never was like, oh yeah, these guys are really likable characters that I'm rooting for. Enzo, I was rooting for the entire time. That doesn't mean 1 and 2 didn't have good characters, but in this one, I was rooting from the beginning. And right off the bat, when you're stuck in the mine and you're with your friend and he's talking about going, to the United States and all of that, you can feel what they're feeling, right? You just are bought in right from the jump. And then for you to go from there to being a part of the family, right? All of that is, and then when you first get to the kind of compound, right, to the vineyard area, everything is kind of changing in your life, and it all feels so perfect, right? And then you end up meeting Isabella, and right from that moment, okay, that to me was my favorite storyline throughout the whole thing. It really is kind of the main storyline throughout the whole thing, and you will never guess where it ends up, right, in terms of how this thing ends. But throughout the game, you're continuing the storyline, and one of the beautiful things about it is that, and this is something I think Mafia the series has done better than any game I have played regarding the mob, is that it really doesn't sugarcoat the realities of these mob families, right? You are seeing the whole time corruption. You are seeing betrayal. You are seeing kind of ruthless people who talk about loyalty but stab others in the back. And it's weird because when you first get there, right, and you see the mob boss in this, so Don, right, he is, to me at least, he was a very nice character. He was awesome. And then you just kind of get hints from Isabel. Oh, he's actually not that great, right? She's just kind of dropping hints about, and you can tell that her relationship with him is not great. But you don't fully grasp it in the beginning, and Enzo doesn't either. And then as the story goes on, you just see a little bit more and more, and you see what the war between the two families is doing, and you just kind of go on and on. And the beginning of it is you getting through, kind of your revenge on the people from when you were in the mine, right? You're getting revenge on those people, and then you're getting on the revenge on the people who killed Luca. And once you do that, everything begins to change because now you're saying, me and Isabella, we're going to go off and we're going to go to America, sneaking out. And then that's where everything changes, right? That's honestly, so the vast majority of this game is a ton of fun. There's a lot of sneaking around. There's a lot of moments like that where you're doing stealthy stuff. There are some cool gameplay moments of you riding a horse, driving a car. They bring back the race sequence, although you could tell through the race sequences, they made them way easier than they were in prior games. And prior, especially the first one, that race sequence was just a nightmare. But they kind of, you do all these really cool missions, and that feels like the story, right? And you're going through, like I said, I was tied in from the jump, and I was loving every minute of it. Little did I know, chapter 14, and here's where the real spoilers comes in. Little did I know, chapter 14 was gonna in itself be its own mini story, right? Like it's own, it's the only way to put it is you do all this stuff leading up to this big moment, and then you're finally about to leave. You're finally about to escape, and what happens? You get caught, right? So now you and Isabella are separated, and so you have to fight through, and you end up saving Cesari, I believe his name is, his life, right? Because he was going to kill you. You could have killed him, and you decide to save his life. You end up fighting off all of the Don's men, end up killing the Don, and then you see him again, right? And he's looking at you, and he ends up stabbing you in the back. So think about this, right? You could have killed him. You end up saving him, and then because of that decision, he ends up killing you, and you don't make it back to Isabella. I mean, that's such a crazy moment, and you don't see it coming, and then you do see it coming, but it was still so shocking because you see him there and you realize we did this whole game, we did everything only for him to end up dying in the end from this. And it's a wild moment. It was a sad moment. I was pissed off, still am about it because I literally just got done playing it. You're pissed, you're all of that, and then it quickly switches you to Isabella when she's getting away from them, right? And she gets away, and then she's able to escape. And the ending scene is, her obviously upset as she reads the note that Enzo left her, but then you see the sun come, and she's smiling finally as she sees New York, I think it was New York at least, as she sees America. And it was just such a great story. The ending is so shocking. Like I said, if I told you I loved the ending, I loved it from a making you feel something perspective, but obviously I would have preferred a happy ending, and that's not this. It was just a phenomenal game. And, I understand this is one of those games where it's going to be heavily divided because I could see the argument as to why people say, look, I don't really like this game. It's not really my game. Don't really have fun with it. Was too narrative driven, wasn't like Mafia. Like, I would get all of that, right? But also, I just think from a narrative perspective, if you like these kind of narrative driven games, everything about this is really phenomenal. And I hope they have DLCs. I hope we get everything with this and they continue to build out this story, in terms of like little different things. The problem is they killed off Enzo. So who would I rather be than Enzo? Probably nobody. I'm not sure where it goes from here. I was really hoping that Enzo was still alive at the end, but he is most certainly dead. So thank you all for watching, and we'll see you next time.